Hello, Biology 130 students, and welcome to an introduction to anatomy and physiology at Columbia College. I'm your host and your instructor, Greg Doheny, and this video is intended to be just a brief introduction to how the course works, how the course is delivered. This is a flex course delivered over the internet, as you know. And this course was invented originally in this form to accommodate the COVID-19 pandemic so that we don't have to come to college. Normally this course is taught in the college, in the Columbia College Anatomy Lab, and hopefully someday when the COVID-19 pandemic is over, I will see some of you at Columbia College. But for now, let's just go through a very brief introduction about how this course is delivered over the internet. So, as I said, my name is Greg Doheny. That's me. That's my name. This is me over here, sort of what I look like. And my email address is gdoheny@columbiacollege.ca. And my office hours for this course will be Monday from 4 to 5. What I will probably end up doing is I'm teaching two courses this semester. I'm teaching Biology 100 as well as Biology 130. And both courses are flex courses. And the students, it would probably give the students more flexibility if I combined the office hour for my Biology 100 course with the office hour for my Biology 130 course, so that students from either course have a 2-hour window in which to come and ask me questions. Now, I will not be holding office hours at the college because we're not going to the college, but I am holding office hours virtually using a computer program, an internet communications program called Microsoft Teams. If you are a member of the college, if you're a student at Columbia College, as you are, you have access to the Microsoft Teams program, and you can talk to me through Microsoft Teams. Most of the instructors in the college are offering office hours and teaching via the Teams program rather than Zoom, because it's impossible to do Zoom bombing. I don't know if you know what Zoom bombing is, but it's a way that hackers can hack into virtual classrooms using Zoom. Teams is not vulnerable to that type of hacking, so that's why we're doing it with Teams instead. So the office hours will be organized through Teams. You have to download the Teams program to your computer, and I will explain how to do that later. But my office hours will be Monday from 3 to 5. Originally, 4 to 5 is for Biology 130 and 3 to 4 is for Biology 100. But I think I'll probably end up combining the two office hours so that you can come and talk to me anytime between 3 and 5 o'clock on Monday. Now, in order to complete this course, you will have to use 3 different internet programs. The first internet program is called CAMS, which is the kind of the default program for the college, and your official grades are stored in the CAMS program. How do you get to the CAMS website? Well, if you go to the college website, if you go to the Columbia College website, which is Columbia College, www.columbiacollege.ca, you go to that website and you log in. So when you see there's a pull-down menu on the right-hand side of the page that says log in, if you pull that menu down and you look, you'll see that you have the option to log in to Moodle or to the student portal. If you log in to the student portal, you will be in the CAMS program, and that is the place where all of your official grades are stored. You also have the option of logging into the Moodle program, which is you get to it the same way, except that in the login you log in through Moodle instead of CAMS, instead of student portal rather. And Moodle is what's known as a classroom management program. It's designed for teachers to deliver learning materials and teaching materials to their students. So all of the information that you're going to use to learn anatomy is on the Moodle page. So you get to the Moodle page by going to the Columbia College website and logging into Moodle, and then you will see a window that shows you all of the courses that you're taking this semester in the Moodle program window. So you simply click on Biology 130, and then that takes you to a web page where all of the reading materials and all of the lecture materials are presented there for your convenience. Okay, so that's Moodle. You don't need to install Moodle on your computer. You don't need to install CAMS on your computer. The third program that we'll be using is called Microsoft Teams, as I just mentioned. It is going to be used for face-to-face office hours, and when I say face-to-face office hours, I mean that my camera will be turned on, but your camera does not have to be turned on. I know that some people are self-conscious about being on camera. If your camera is turned on during the office hour while you're talking to me, bear in mind the fact that other students can see you. So I can see you as well as the other students. So bear that in mind, so you can make a decision whether you want to keep your camera on or off. My camera will be on, but your camera does not have to be on. You can just communicate with me by voice. So it'll be a drop-in session where you simply, it's not the weekly office hours will not be a formal lecture or anything like that, because this is a flex course which does not hold the lectures at regular times. So I will not be holding lectures or anything during the office hours. I will simply be there to answer your questions. So come prepared. If you have questions, you can ask them to me in person. But I should tell you that there's also a place on the Moodle website called the Questions Forum. Questions Forum, a forum, of course, is a place where people can go to talk freely amongst themselves. And so the Questions Forum is a place where you can submit written questions to me on the Moodle webpage, and I will submit written answers. Again, bear in mind that if you ask me a question that way, your name will appear on the question, and all of the other students will be able to read the question. But more importantly, all of the students will be able to read my answer to your question. And that's part of the idea. So if you have a question about something, if you're confused about something in the course, you have the option of asking me a question, and all of the other students will see the answer that I wrote. So this way I don't have to answer the same question multiple times from different students asking the same question, because everybody will see the question, everybody will see the answer. So don't be shy about posting questions in the Questions Forum. That's what it's for. It's for you ask me questions, I write the answers, and then all of the students are enlightened by the answers and by the questions. All right, so we have to use CAMS. That's where your grades are. You will spend most of your time on Moodle, on the Moodle page, because that's where all the lecture materials are, and that's where all the tests are administered. And if you want, you can spend some time in the office hours asking me questions over the internet. It is not required that you attend the office hour. It's optional. It's purely voluntary. It's for your benefit. All right, so as I said, if you go to the Columbia College website, you will see this page, and if you go to the top right-hand corner, you'll see that there's a section that says Login. This thing is called a pull-down menu. If you click on any of these words, agents, alumni, faculty, it will pull a menu down for you to see. If you click on the student portal, when you pull down the login menu, if you click on the student portal, that will take you to the CAMS program where you can view your grades as well as viewing which courses you're registered in. But if you click on the Moodle and you sign into the Moodle page, that will take you to the home page, to a home page in Moodle that lists all of the courses that you're registered for. That will look something like this. And then if you click on Biology 130, Anatomy and Physiology, it will take you to the home page for this course. And you can recognize that by the skeleton. And so this is the home page for Biology 130. This is a drawing of a skeleton from the Middle Ages, when people from the Renaissance, basically. But we have it's quite a shame, actually, that you don't get to go to the college anatomy lab, because we have a very impressive anatomy lab, including a skeleton that's named Leonardo. So this is a virtual skeleton. If we were taking this course in person, we would be looking at things on the real skeleton. All right, so here you are in the Biology 130 Moodle page. To get started, all you have to do is simply scroll downwards and start reading. Simply scroll down and start reading. And so there'll be a brief introduction to the course. And With that brief introduction to the course, you will find a bunch of links that are colored blue to indicate that those are links. You know, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with internet links being blue. You just click on the blue text and it takes you to another page. So if you go to the Biology 130 web page, the Moodle page, you scroll down, there will be a lot of instructions that tell you how to navigate your way through the course and what to do. And in fact, the course is divided into 13 weeks, 13 individual weeks. We start on week number 1, we finish on week number 14, which is the final exam week. And each week for this course, if you scroll down on the Moodle page, you will find that each week has a list of things that you're supposed to do that week. So it couldn't be simpler. You simply go down to whichever week you're on, week 1, week 2, week 3, and so on. And you start clicking, you follow the list of things that you're supposed to do and start clicking on the links. Some of the links will take you to lectures, which are stored on YouTube. And some of the links will take you to quizzes, which you're supposed to complete that week. So every week we complete at least one what's called an open book exercise and one quiz each week, plus a midterm, some other tests, and a final exam. So if you scroll down the page, for instance, to week 8, you'll see that in week 8 we're going to be discussing the cardiovascular system, which means that we're going to discuss, there's a brief introduction to what we're doing. We're going to discuss the heart and the blood vessels. And then there's a list here that says things to do this week. And it says watch lecture 10 part 1, lecture 10 part 2, and lecture 10 part 3. So those links will take you to 3 different lectures by me on YouTube. And then if you want, you can the lectures are in the form of voiceover PowerPoint presentations, just like this one is. And if you want to review the lecture, the slides, without having to listen to the narration all over again, you have the option of just clicking on the slides. So I have a PDF format for the slides, so you can either view the slides with the narration or you can just view the slides as a PDF file. Then every week I assign you to read a chapter in something called a coloring workbook, which I will explain later. But every one of you needs to buy the Anatomy and Physiology coloring workbook. That's one of the compulsory things that you need to do this course. If you're absolutely unable to get it, it's better if you have it because it's easier to read a book than a PDF file. But if you are absolutely unable to get it, I am posting some of the chapters from the coloring book as PDF files, just because I realize that depending on which country you're in, if you're in Canada, if you're in the United States, it's fairly easy to get this book. You simply order it from Amazon, the Amazon bookseller. If you're in Vancouver, if you're in the Greater Vancouver area, you know, Greater Vancouver, Vancouver, Richmond, North Vancouver, Burnaby, Surrey, and so on, all you have to do is come to the college and the college bookstore will sell it to you because we have copies at the college bookstore. Or you can simply order it through Amazon. If you order it through Amazon.ca, it usually arrives in about a week. But there are many countries in the world where it's almost impossible to get this book. And so if you find yourself in that situation, for your benefit, I will be posting some of the chapters. I will be posting the chapters from this book as a PDF on the college website as well. All right, then, so every week I assign you a chapter from this coloring book, which you're supposed to read and study. And then having read the coloring book chapter that was assigned sometime on Wednesday, sorry, this picture is in error. Every Wednesday, you have to complete what's known as an open book test, right? An open book test is where you have that coloring book sitting in front of you, and I ask you questions about the chapter that you just read. And it's impossible to memorize the whole chapter, but you can look through the book as you're doing the open book test. Now, then after the test is closed, which is on Thursday, so you have all day Wednesday to do the open book test. On Thursday, the answers will be posted, and you can see which questions you got right and which questions you got wrong. Now, the following week, we will have a quiz. Every week there'll be a weekly quiz that contains questions that came from all of the previous open book tests. So that means that it's in your best interests to find out which questions you got wrong and to find out what the correct answer is, because that same question that you got wrong this week may very well appear in next week's quiz. Okay, So the open book test, every week we do something called an open book test, which is based on the chapter that I assigned you to read from the coloring book. And every week we do a quiz, a short quiz. The quiz is always based on questions from previous open book tests. Now, the time that you're given to complete the open book test is very long. You have 90 minutes, an hour and a half to complete that exercise. And you're allowed to look at the book. But you have to continue studying the book because the quiz is not like that. With the quiz, the time that I give you to complete the quiz is actually very limited. I give you 20 minutes to answer 40 multiple choice questions, most of which are previous open book tests. Right? So you have one chance to leisurely go through a chapter, answer a bunch of questions, and then find out what the correct answers actually are, although it is worth 2% of your marks, so it's better if you know what the correct answers are before you actually answer them. But if you got the questions wrong, it's not the end of the world. You can find out what the correct answer is. But then the next time you see those questions, you will not be given anywhere near the same amount of time to answer them. I will tell you that you will find it very stressful to try and answer 40 multiple choice questions in 20 minutes. I find it stressful even though I wrote the tests. But that's part of the idea. Generally, we don't learn anything if we're not under stress. That's just a sad fact about the human condition. Unless we have something at risk, unless we have something to lose, we generally don't work very hard. Or we don't make a big effort to learn. So a little bit of stress is actually helpful. If we're not under any stress, we don't learn anything. If you're under too much stress, you don't learn anything either because it's very difficult to learn things that way. But a little bit of stress is actually helpful. And so the very limited time that you get to answer the quiz is designed to add a little bit of stress to the mixture, which makes you learn things better. And the other reason for doing that is that I have no way of telling that you're not looking the questions up in the coloring book, right? So one way, a device to avoid cheating is to simply give you a test where you don't have enough time to look up the answers. And so that's the other reason for doing this. So the reason for giving a very limited amount of time for the quizzes every week is, number one, because it helps the learning process. Number two, because it prevents cheating. The same thing, as you'll see, for the midterm exam and the final exam, the same situation will apply. You'll have a very limited amount of time to answer quite a few questions. When we're doing this course in person, the time isn't quite as limited because you're writing the tests in the classroom and I'm there to make sure that nobody's looking at the book. But I can't do that on the internet, so this is one of the ways that I prevent people from looking in the book. So the questions are not very difficult, but there are a lot of them and you're not given very much time to answer. The third reason for doing this is that it allows us to separate very gifted students from average students, because honestly anyone could get an A grade if you gave them an indefinite amount of time to answer the questions. But if you give the students a very limited amount of time to answer the questions, only the best students can answer them all in the time given and answer them correctly in the time given. Everybody else falls somewhere in between, so we give the A+ students are able to answer every question correctly in a very short amount of time. Maybe the B students get a few wrong here and there, the C students get a few wrong here and there, maybe the C students don't quite have time to finish because they spend too long trying to remember the answer. So all of these things are reasons why I give a very limited amount of time for the weekly quiz. All right, so this is basically what your list of things to do looks like every week, and then at the end I say if there's not something that you didn't understand, you can feel free to leave it in the forum. Okay, so the links take you to various things. In this case, this is showing 3 different lectures which are stored on my YouTube page. If you click on that link, you'll be taken to the lecture on YouTube. Now, one of the advantages to having lectures on YouTube is that, in case you didn't know this, these 3 little dots down here at the bottom of the video, if you click on them, it will give you some extra options for viewing the video. And one of the options says Open Transcript. And this is the transcript over here on the right. Right, so as I'm lecturing through a PowerPoint presentation, and if I'm talking too fast, which I often do, or if it's difficult to understand what I'm saying, you have this option of reading a simultaneous translation of what I'm saying. It's called closed captioning, in fact. So you have the option of reading what I'm saying as well. Sometimes I say a word that you'd like to look up in the dictionary, but you don't know how to spell it. This will allow you to do that as well. So just remember that one of the advantages of viewing these lectures on YouTube is that you have the ability to open up the transcript and read it as well. Okay, so here we have, every week we have an open book test and an anatomy quiz. These blue links here are links to quizzes. If you click on one of those links, for example, you'll see quiz 7. It says that the quiz, in this case, it says that the quiz will not be open until Thursday, September 3rd, 2020 at 4 p.m. So this test is already over with, obviously. And if you try to do the same thing with all of the open book tests and all of the quizzes this semester, you'll see that they will not be open. They will not be available for you to write until Wednesday of every week. So you can do the work anytime you want. You can read you can watch all the lectures during the first week of class if you like. That's a lot of work. But you can do that work anytime you like. The only thing you have to worry about timing for is that the quiz and the open book exercise have to be done on Wednesday, but I don't care what time on Wednesday you do it. Now, interestingly, notice that there's a time limit. What it means is that you can open the quiz and begin the quiz anytime you want on Wednesday, but once you start the quiz, you have only 20 minutes to complete it. So when you start it, you'll see a timer will appear, and then you'll see the questions appear, and you have to click on the correct answers. Now, one thing that's peculiar about these quizzes and these open book tests. For the open book test, the open book test is meant to be an exercise. It's not a test of what you know. It's an exercise that gives you an excuse to go through the material, to navigate your way through the material and manipulate it, which is another way that we learn things. So the open book exercise is meant to be an exercise, not a test per se. You do get a mark for it, but it's meant to be an exercise, not a test of your memory. And so for the open book exercise, you have somewhere between 30 and sometimes even 60 or 90 questions that have to be answered in 90 minutes. But all the questions appear on the same page, which means that if you answer one of the questions and then you start moving down to one of the, you go beyond that question and you're down at the bottom of the page, and suddenly you remember that the answer that you gave at the top of the page is wrong, you have the ability to go back up to the top of the page and change your answer. That is something that's something that you're only able to do for the open book exercise. When you write the quiz, you don't have that option. What happens with the quiz is there are 40 multiple choice questions. There are 10 of them per page. And once you've answered all 10 questions on that page and moved on to the next page, you do not have the opportunity to go back. In fact, if you try to go back to the previous page, you're not allowed to do that, and the Moodle program may actually crash, and you'll have to log out and log back in again, which is a waste of time. You lose time if you have to do that. So just bear in mind that for the quiz, you cannot navigate backwards and go back to a previous page. There are 10 questions per page. You do not have the option to go back and change your answers on the previous page. Again, that feature is meant to prevent cheating. I can explain that to anyone who's interested, but it's a method of preventing cheating. Okay, so bear in mind that for the open book test, you have a lot of time, and you have the ability, all of the questions are on the same page. You have the ability to go back to a previous question and change the answer if you realize that you made a mistake. The quiz is quite different. The quiz, you have to answer 40 questions in 20 minutes, which is a very short amount of time. You really have to know the material in order to answer all the questions correctly. There are only 10 questions per page, and once you've answered those 10 questions and moved on to the next page, you do not have the option of going back. Do not have the option of going back. Okay, so here's a typical multiple choice question, and I've deliberately given the wrong answer here, I think. And the next day, Thursday, after the test is closed, you have the option of going back and reviewing your open book test and reviewing your quiz to make sure that you know what the correct answers were. So here we have the question shown again, and the answer is visible when you're reviewing the tests the next day. Okay, now I should tell you that you do not have the option of reviewing your previous tests and open book exercises indefinitely. You do not have the option of doing that indefinitely, because what's going to happen is that you'll have 6 days to review this week's quiz and this week's open book exercise, and then they will disappear. And the reason for that is because you're then going to answer another test the following week, and we don't want you to be able to look at the correct answers from the previous week. So please remember that you do not have an indefinite amount of time to review your tests and quizzes. You have only 6 days. So the following Tuesday, the tests and the quizzes that you wrote the week before will disappear, and they will not reappear. So make sure that you review your quizzes. Make sure that you review or revise your quizzes and your open book exercises during the time that you're allowed to. All right, so what do you do each week? You simply scroll down to the weekly schedule, right? And there's a list of things that you're supposed to do that week. You were assigned to watch a couple of videos every week. It's optional whether or not you want to review the slides or read the textbook. I'll explain about the textbook in a minute. You are required to read a chapter every week in the coloring workbook, which you have to buy. As I said, if you have trouble getting it, I will be posting PDFs, but it's better to have a solid copy of the book, right? So you're assigned to read a coloring workbook chapter every week, and then every week, sometime on Wednesday, do the open book assignment, which is questions based on the reading assignment from the coloring workbook that I assigned you, that chapter that I assigned you that week. Each open book exercise is worth 2% of your grade. And then each week you have a quiz, which is based on questions from all the previous open book assignments. You have to do that sometime on Wednesday, and each of those is worth 2% of your grades as well. Okay, and then if you want to, you can leave a question for me in the forum, or you can ask me a question in person on the virtual office hours. So that's what you have to do every week for this course. There are 13 weeks. There are 13 different topics, a different topic every week. And this again is what the list looks like. Okay, what do you need to complete this course? You need a computer, of course. You're probably reading this or watching this video on a computer, but you need a computer that has a fast internet connection. It's quite difficult to do these quizzes and these open book exercises if you have a really slow, unpredictable internet connection. So I advise you to find someplace where you can write the quizzes and the open book exercises that has a good connection. So if you don't have a good, fast, reliable internet connection at home, you might want to go to an internet cafe or to the library or to a friend's house. Just any place where you have a better connection, because having the worst thing that, by past experience, the worst thing that can happen to a student in this course is that they have an unreliable internet connection. Sometimes an unreliable internet connection will crash so that you're disconnected from the Moodle page. If that happens, you have no choice but to try logging back in again and continuing. But every time you do that, you end up losing time, and the time is very limited on some of the tests. So try and do your best to find a good, reliable internet connection and work from there. I don't recommend using a phone to do this course because it's much slower to type on a phone. The images are less clear because they're smaller. So if you have no choice, it is possible to do this course on a phone, but I strongly recommend against that. I strongly recommend that you get a computer. Now I'm sure that many of you are aware that Columbia College has an equipment purchase loan program where the college will loan students the money to buy a computer, and you just have to pay it back later over a longer period of time. So if you don't have a laptop computer, a good fast laptop computer, the college will loan you a certain amount of money to buy one. if you're interested in that, you should talk to one of the counselors about that. All right, the second thing you need is the anatomy coloring workbook. I have provided on the Moodle page, when you go and look at the Moodle page, you'll see that I've provided a link to Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, where you can buy it from Amazon. But as I said, you can also buy it from the Columbia College bookstore, and you can buy it from Chapters bookstore, the UBC bookstore if you're closer to UBC. The Simon Fraser bookstore may have it as well. There are many places where you can get this book. And if you are unable to get it at all, of course, I'll be putting up some PDFs. I would advise that the coloring book, as you read through each chapter, one of the ways that they teach you to learn anatomy is by carrying out a coloring book exercise. So I recommend, I don't require, but I recommend that you buy some crayons. And now don't laugh, this is not a course for children, but it has actually been proven scientifically that it makes learning anatomy easier if you actually carry out these coloring book exercises. So the coloring book tells you to color in, they give you a picture of the skeleton, and they tell you to color in this bone red and another bone yellow and another bone green and another bone blue. And that coloring exercise, as you're actually doing it, allows you to learn anatomy. As ridiculous as that may sound, it actually works. But I'm not requiring that you do that, because there are some students who like to buy the coloring book and then they sell it to their friends who are taking this course another semester, and obviously their friends are not going to buy it if it's already been colored and marked up. So there are some students who buy the book and try not to draw or make any marks in the book, because then they have the option of selling it to their friends later on, and so that's perfectly all right. I think you would learn, the book is only $30. I think you would learn more if you did the coloring exercises, but that's your decision. Okay, now there is another anatomy textbook that is designed to accompany the lectures, and it's free. It's available over the internet. I've written that it's optional for you to read it. Sorry, I made a mistake there, but it's optional for you to read the textbook, which is called Introduction to Anatomy and Physiology by Betts et al. And it is a free book that's available over the internet. You can read it over the internet, or you can download it as a PDF. That's totally up to you. I would recommend reading the book if you don't understand the lectures, or if you want more information about what I'm lecturing on, but it's not required. So when you're writing the tests, the midterm and the final, which have the weekly quiz and the weekly open book test are based solely on the anatomy coloring workbook, but the midterm and the final exam are based largely, but not completely, on the material that's presented in the lectures. Now, if you want to, so you do need to study the lectures, and I would recommend just studying the lecture slides for that. You don't necessarily have to read the book, or you won't necessarily gain anything by reading the Betts anatomy book. All right, so as you've gathered, there are two sections to this course. There's a lecture section, which is worth 66% of your grade, and there's a lab section, which is worth 44% of your grade. You should know that it's Columbia College policy, in fact, it's the policy of all colleges and universities that you have to pass both the lab and the lecture section of a course in order to pass the course. So that means you must get at least 33 out of the 66% in the lecture section to pass, and you must get at least 22% out of the 44% for the lab in order to pass. If you fail the lab, even though the lab is worth less than the lecture, if you fail the lab while at the same time getting 100%, 66% by answering every question correctly in the lecture section, you would still fail the course, which would be a tragedy, because you have to pass both. That's a requirement. So just bear that in mind. If you're taking other science courses at Columbia that have a lab component, just bear in mind that that's the policy of that course as well, in case your lab instructor didn't tell you. So you have to pass both. The lecture section basically includes the midterm, the final, and two what are called theme quizzes that collectively add up to 66%. And the lab section includes 11 open book tests, 2% each, that's 22, and 11 quizzes, 2% each, that's 22, for a total of 44% from the lab section. All right, about the anatomy coloring workbook. This is what it looks like. If you're going to buy it, make sure that you're purchasing the 4th edition. Make sure that you're only getting the 4th edition. The assignments and the questions are different if you get the 3rd or 2nd edition, so make sure that it's the 4th edition. And you can buy some crayons, and then as you go through it, you'll see that they have a number of lovely illustrations. And then you're supposed to take your crayons, and they'll give you some instructions. They'll say that, this plate here is called the parietal plate of the skull. Color the parietal plate in blue. And then this section here is called the frontal plate of the skull. Color the frontal plate in yellow. And then this part here is called the occipital plate of the skull. They'll say color the occipital plate in red. And while you're doing this, while you're coloring away like a child, you will actually learn about the anatomy parts that you're supposed to be learning. So I gave you a link on the Moodle page, which leads you to the Amazon.ca page where you can buy it. It's generally around $30. If you're in Canada, if you're in the Greater Vancouver area, you'll probably get it in 1 or 2 weeks. Okay, so we said you need to complete the course. You need the anatomy coloring workbook. But what about this one, the textbook? So as I said, it's an online book. You can read it online, or you can download it as a PDF. There's also an app that allows you to go through questions in it. That is suggested, recommended, but not required. If your time is limited, if your study time is limited, I would recommend studying the coloring book, the questions and answers from the coloring book that you'll be getting each week. And I would recommend studying the slides from the lectures, but I would not worry too much about reading the anatomy and physiology book unless you're interested and you're interested in learning more detail. Okay, so how do you get started? You simply go to the Moodle page and start reading, and that will tell you how to navigate your way through the course. The course is divided into 13 weeks. Each week has a different subject. You simply scroll down the Moodle page and see the list of things you're supposed to be doing that week, and then click on the blue text, the hot links that will take you to the lectures or the quizzes or the reading materials. Okay, so the lecture sections. As I said, every week you'll watch 1 or 2 videos that are on the YouTube. They are basically voiceover PowerPoint presentations like I'm giving you now, right? And then on Wednesday, October 20th, we have the midterm exam. It's worth 20% of your grade. So that's considered to be part of the lecture section. Then we have the final exam, which is worth 30% of your grade, but we don't know what date that will be on until the college publishes the final exam schedule. So I will let you know that information when I receive it. And then we have 2 what are called theme quizzes. One of them is a test, a 2-hour test that is entirely about muscles. The reason why we do that is because the kind of people that take this course are interested, some of you are interested in becoming doctors. Some of you, of course, are just taking this course because you need the elective, and that's perfectly all right. That's perfectly all right in my opinion. But some of you are taking it because you want to go to medical school, you want to become a doctor, you want to become a nurse. And many of you might go into another allied health profession, as they're called. You might be a physiotherapist or a massage therapist or a chiropractor or something like that. And so for all of these professions, it's critical that you know a lot about all the different muscle groups. It's one of the things that you all have in common. So one of the things that a doctor and a physiotherapist and a massage therapist all have in common is that they all know about the muscles. And so learning the muscles is very important. So we're going to dedicate an entire test to just the muscles, but it's only worth 3% of your grade, and it will be held on Thursday, October 14th. Again, blood vessels has a separate test. That doesn't mean that you won't get questions on blood vessels in the midterm and the final. You probably will. But we're going to do a theme quiz, as it's called, a theme quiz that concentrates just on the blood vessels. And it's on November 8th. And again, the reason for that is because everybody who is in an allied health profession, doctors and nurses are considered to be health professionals. And then everybody else that interacts with patients and so on is called an allied health, is said to be a member of the allied health professions. And so that includes pharmacists, dentists, physiotherapists, chiropractors, massage therapists. All of those people are considered to be in the allied health professions. So for all of those people that are in the medical profession or the allied health professions, it is very critical. They all generally have to know where all the blood vessels are and where the important ones are. Okay, so we'll have a test that's dedicated just to the blood vessels, and that's on November 8th. Okay, so the midterm were 20%, the final were 30%, the muscle test and the blood vessel test 6% total, 3% each. That's a total of 66% for the lecture section of the course. Now for the lab section of the course, each week you're assigned a coloring book test, a coloring book chapter to read, and then we have a weekly quiz and a weekly open book test, each of which is worth 2% of your grade. For 22 marks for the quizzes, 22 marks for the open book exercises, for 44% for your what are known as lab activities, the lab section of the course. Okay, remember that you're given 90 minutes for the open book test and only 20 minutes for the quiz. The quiz includes questions from all of the previous open book tests. You have a chance to find out what the correct answers are if you didn't get them the first time. Now, because many of you will not get your coloring book until the second or third week of classes, the very first quiz and the very first open book test that you're going to write are based on a handout that I give you virtually. So if you look on your week 1 schedule for week 1 on the Moodle page, you'll see a link to something called handout number 1. Handout number 1 is an introduction to the muscles in the body and the bones of the body and what's known as the anatomical directions of the body. So every area of the body has a certain name given to it. For example, the axillary region is the area under the armpit, the brachial region is the area just above the elbow, so on and so forth, right? So every area of the body has a specific name, and these names are explained to you in the handout. You will also learn the major bones and the major muscles of the body in the handout. So during week 1 and week 2, study the handout because the first 2 quizzes are going to be based on the handout. So bear that in mind. And then in week 3, we start in earnest with testing you on the chapters of the coloring book. Okay, so why do we call this a lab? Well, reading a coloring book and doing the coloring exercises is the closest thing we can do to a real lab exercise if you're not on the college campus. So at Columbia College, we have a very impressive anatomy lab that has lots of anatomical models. We have skeletal models. We have models of arms and legs and the muscle groups in the arms and legs. We have blood pressure measuring equipment. We have thermometers, sphygmomanometers, stethoscopes, and so on. All of these things that you would learn anatomy if we could go to the campus, but we can't due to the pandemic. So the closest thing we can do is to do these exercises in the coloring book and then do a lot of quizzing about that. But if we were in the college campus, we would be doing this stuff in the laboratory, and we would be doing a lot of exercises where we manipulate the anatomy models in the lab. All right, so this is what's known as an asynchronous course. This is a flex course. So this is Biology 130 Flex. Flex refers to a flexible schedule. It's designed for students who who can't be available at a certain time at regular times on the college campus. That may be because you're in a different country, or it may be because you have a job during the day and you can't go to classes during the day. So it's known as an asynchronous course, but it has synchronous parts to it. Synchronous means we all have to be doing the same thing at the same time. So asynchronous means we don't have to be all doing the same thing at the same time. Synchronous means we all have to be doing the same thing at the same time. So the asynchronous components of the course include watching the videos. You can do that anytime or as many times as you like, and you can turn on the transcript and you can read and you can review the slides. Okay, and then the open book test, that's considered to be, the weekly open book test is considered to be an asynchronous part as well, because even though you have to do it on Wednesday, you're allowed to do it anytime on Wednesday. The same thing goes for the quiz. So the open book test and the quiz, they both have to be done on Wednesday every week, but they can be done anytime on Wednesday. Just bear in mind that when you start the quiz, you have only 20 minutes to complete it. When you start the open book test, you have 90 minutes to complete it. The muscle test on October 14th, Thursday, October 14th, you can submit it, you can do it anytime during that day. So it's an asynchronous component. The same thing goes for the blood vessel test on November 8th. You can Monday, November 8th, anytime during the day you can do that test. It just has to be sometime during that day. All right, now what about the synchronous parts of this course? Well, we all have to write the midterm on the same day at the same time to make sure that nobody's writing it and writing it first and then telling their friends what was on it. So we all have to be doing it at the same time. Now, so the midterm exam will be on Wednesday, October 20th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Vancouver time. Remember that all of these dates are on Vancouver time, including the Wednesday. Anytime Wednesday refers to anytime Wednesday in Vancouver time, for example. So the midterm will be 6 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, October 20th, but I recognize the fact that some of you may absolutely, no matter what you do, you cannot be available at that time, including the fact that some of you may be in different countries that have a different time zone. So you may be in a country that's 12 hours ahead of Vancouver, for example. So for those people, I offer you the opportunity to write an early quiz, which is offered from midnight to 2 a.m. on Wednesday, October 20th. So you can either write the earlier midterm on Wednesday in the a.m. hours, midnight to 2 a.m., or you can write a different midterm, a different but equivalent midterm from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So you have two choices. Okay, and then the final exam, we're going to do the same thing there. There'll be an early exam. The final exam is usually on a Saturday. Typically the last Saturday. For flex courses, usually the final exams are on a Saturday, the last Saturday of the exam week. But we'll see what happens. I will let you know that information when I have it. Nevertheless, we will have the final exam. The main final exam will be on that Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. unless you request the midnight to 2 a.m. exam. So in total, we have 11 quizzes, 22%, 11 open book exercises, 22%, a midterm, 20%, a muscle test and a blood vessel test, 3% each, and a final exam for a total of 100%. The final exam will be the same format as the midterm exam. It will have a short answer component and a multiple choice component, but you can read more about that on the webpage. And so good luck with this course and happy learning. I hope that even if you're taking this course because you just want an elective, I hope you have fun. I hope you learn. In my opinion, there's nothing funner than learning something new. And so I hope you will learn some new things that you can make use of in your life and enjoy the learning process. Okay, thank you very much.